I was born in Kingston, Jamaica in 1960 to Frida and Slade. My brother Keita came in 1966. My birth family has lived in Jamaica, Trinidad, Guyana, the US, and Canada. I began reading at age 3 and was reading Homer's Iliad and Kurt Vonnegut by age 10. My favorite fiction has always been the various forms of fantastical fiction, everything from Caribbean folklore to Ursula K. Le Guin's science fiction and fantasy. I began writing in the genre somewhere around 1993 and sold a couple of short stories before I attended the Clarion Science Fiction Writing Workshop, then held at Michigan State University in East Lansing, Michigan, USA in 1995. In 1997, I won the Warner Aspect First Novel Contest for my novel Brown Girl in the Ring, which Warner Aspect then published in 1998. I've written and published 9 books of fiction and a number of short stories, and I've won some literary awards. I now live in Southern California in the U.S. and am a professor of creative writing at the University of California, Riverside, where I'm a member of a faculty research cluster in science fiction. I sew, craft objects in whichever media strike my fancy, design fabric, and cook food that mostly turns out pretty well. I have fibromyalgia and was diagnosed relatively late in life with adult attention deficit disorder and nonverbal learning disorder, which explained a lot. I like moderate sunshine, love bopping around in the surf, and dream of one day living in a converted church, fire station, or library. Or in a super Adobe monolithic dome home. I'm Nalo Hopkinson.
So thank you very much for taking half an hour out of your Sunday to talk to me and to the subscribers of ONYX Pages. So Nalo, the first question that I have for you is, how would you describe the genres that you write within, and why would you describe them that way?
I say science fiction and fantasy because that's what I read and enjoy, and I write from and to that canon. I also say it partly as a political thing because there is this sort of snobbery in the literary world about genre fiction. And so I say it as a challenge because usually it's people who've never read any who are like, oh my God, not that stuff. That stuff has no literary value and it's nonsense. It sometimes means I lose interviews, lose jobs, lose, or lose the opportunity to apply for jobs. But it seems important to me to not take any form of human art as by nature having no value. I don't think that makes any sense at all.
Are there other genres that you think you would get more like what are the other genres that you think you get more traction if you identified as writing within them?
I could just say fiction.
Oh, I see what you mean. Okay.
Yeah. And there's this idea that fiction means realism. That good fiction means realism. When in fact, realism is a fairly new development in the world of fiction, and really all fiction is fantasy.
Yeah.
Realism is actually a subgenre of fantasy as far as I'm concerned.
When you say realism, because I read a book called The Summer We Got Free by Mia Mackenzie, and that book is I think the genre that it's identified with is magical realism. Is that what you mean by it's magical?
No, not even magical, just straight up realism.
Okay.
Stuff that feels like it could happen in this world.
Okay.
That it would happen in consensus reality.
Consensus reality.
The thing is, if someone's allergic to any sort of expression of the supernatural or considerations about the future and what it'll look like, or any kind of magic, the minute they see that, they'll start to fight the story. And traditionally, we've never done that as human beings. All our stories have been all over the map. They've all contained as much imagination as a storyteller can bring to it. So that's what I do. It's what I enjoy.
And why do you write?
because it's easier than becoming a professional contortionist, which would be, you know, I still think I'm going to grow up to be one, or I'm going to be a crump dancer. I'm 56. I'm going on 57, and tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be a professional crump dancer. But, you know, until then, writing is a little bit easier and a little bit easier on the body if you do it right.
Oh my gosh, I love that. So I think it was earlier this year, or maybe it was last year, because time has a way of twisting itself on me. You delivered a keynote about the imagination and the importance of the imagination. I might have been at a university in California.
Which one?
Uh,
I've spoken recently at UC Irvine, UCLA. It was probably UC Irvine.
And I think I didn't get a copy of the keynote because I'm not sure that they recorded it, but I believe that the topic that you were discussing was the importance of the political value of the imagination and why the imagination is important for us in these political times. Why do you think the imagination is important?
Because it's always been important, because if you want to change the world, you need to be able to imagine the world you want. Because the ability to have our imaginations be free is what we're fighting for. Well, it's one of the things we're fighting for. We need our bodies to be free as well. But, and because of just sheer enjoyment. I mean, yes, we're in struggle. Yes, it seems particularly bad now. When you're not struggling, we have the right to be people who are entertained, who have joy in our lives, who can laugh, and that is why it's so important. It's also important because one of the roles of the arts is to call the status quo into question. That's why the arts are so often under siege from government. They don't like it that we point out that the emperor has no clothes and a really strange orange toupee. So you tell I'm living in the US right now. So that's why the imagination is so important. It is how we free ourselves.
I've read most of what you've written, and I've enjoyed everything of yours that I've read. And I want to do kind of like a quick ask round. I've got all of the books that I have of yours right beside me. You can't see, but it's on a table like right there.
Mm-hmm.
What I'd like to do is just total free association. I'm going to hold up each book, and I'd love for you to just say something about it. And it could be a memory that you have while writing it. It could be your favorite line. It could be something about the character. It could be what you were sewing at the time. It doesn't matter. But I want to do that. Is that okay with you?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh, the Salt Roads. Let's see, I'm not so good at the free association. Give me a few seconds. Fractal math.
My favorite.
Cranky middle-aged Black women rock. Baba Yaga and Burr Nancy and the Tar Baby.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I made Jimi Hendrix's guitar into a character. It was a surprise to me too. That one's harder because it's a short story collection. that it is necessary to fall in love with hominids, so that you don't go crazy.
Apparently, we're all over the place.
That cover has very little to do with anything in the actual book, but it is beautiful.
It really is beautiful. I actually have to ask you something because I've started to listen to the recording of the New Moon's Arms, and I have a question about.
That. Oh, okay. Give me a second.
Okay.
I was terrified all the way through making the speech that is the main part of that book.
This lit up our book club. It lit up fire.
I'm still so happy about that illustration because it was done by the husband and wife team of Leo and Diane Dillon, whose work I had been enjoying since I was quite young, and then discovered when they got permission to do it that Leo Dillon was from Trinidad, so he recognized everything I was talking about in the story.
I really like that cover.
Yeah. First novel, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know when I got to the end.
And then you won Canada Reads 2008. But this isn't the only award that you won for this novel.
It got published because I won the Warner Aspic First Novel Contest. It also, I think, received perhaps the Locus First Novel Award. Been a minute, so I can't always remember.
Of course, I didn't mean to put you on the spot in that way. But yes, this is the first of your writing that I've read, and I think most of the people who said that they wanted to read your work they want to start with this one, which I think makes sense in some ways. But you might have some other thoughts about that. But my friend Nadia introduced me to this, and she's like, "Have you in high school?" And I had heard of you, and I was like,
"Oh my God!"
Oh, it was amazing. These are now we're moving to the collections.
So before I did it, I had no idea what Fabulist Fiction was.
Yeah, that was my first introduction to Fabulist Fiction.
Yeah, me too. That was my first introduction to editing anthologies and to thinking about which authors I would approach in terms of everything, in terms of quality of writing, race, political depth of political thought, that kind of thing. And it was an education for me, and just a lot of fun to see the stories that resulted. I had reached that land of which I had so long been dreaming. That's Sojourner Truth. But also, she's talking about coming over into Canada, but also is references the Bible, and then has a science fiction reference with Heinlein's Stranger in a Strange Land. So Upinder and I like the idea of putting all three of those together in an anthology, the first anthology of science fiction by all writers of color.
The first.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, amazing. And I don't have it. I'm not going to put it up because it's way up there, but I'm now reading Lightspeed, People of Color Destroy Science Fiction. I'm at the last story of part 1, which you co-edited. So I'm really enjoying that. Every short story that I read, I'm just like, oh, this is amazing. And then I read the next one. I'm like, what? How could that be better than the one I just read? So it's, so that's it. Okay. So that's it for the quick response round. Thank you for letting me pull your brain, and thanks for the time traveling that you just did. So we've seen now, aside from your articles and your interviews and your speeches, this is your body of work for the most part, would you say?
In terms of fiction, in terms of writing, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And for someone who is just getting to know your work, where would you suggest that they begin, given the range of your work?
At this point, I'd probably suggest one of the short story collections, so either Skin Folk or Falling in Love with Hominids.
Okay.
Because it gives you a sense of the kinds of characters and settings, and just the variety of my work. And it's not something I notice when I'm doing it, but people comment on when they review it that no two stories are alike, and the characters aren't who they expect to see as protagonists. To me, I'm just writing characters that kind of look like Toronto.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. There was, I think it was when I was reading either the Chaos, it happened in two of them. I'm just looking at them right now. Sister Mine, the actual setting reminded me of the Leslie Spit. And I was walking, I was actually reading it one summer and then walking in that area, and I felt like it was actually possible that there could be a monster in Lake Ontario, like,
yes,
that felt good to me. And the Chaos reminded me of Queen Street West in the 90s when I was going to these poetry and spoken word nights that they used to have. So, and that's happened as I read a lot of your different books, is that I remember different parts of Toronto at different times in my own life and coming of age. And one of the things that I love about, I'm just gonna talk about how much I love your work now. But one of the many things I love about your writing is that I see so much. It mirrors so much of my experience, and it speaks to me in a way that none of the science fiction and fantasy and magical realism that I read coming up ever did. So I read a couple of speculative works by Margaret Atwood as a teenager. I read a little bit of Ursula Le Guin as well, but it was really only until I started reading your work that I was just like, oh my gosh, this person acts like my auntie, like my mom, and it was just amazing to experience. So thank you so much for that. It's such a gift. And that's what I tell people when I tell them that I really enjoy their work. Okay. Sorry, we're going to fix that in the back. So do you like your readers to engage with you? And if so, in what ways? Or are there ways that you don't like your readers to engage with you?
I like to choose when and where and the means in which that happens, but I do enjoy it very much. One of the delightful things about being about science fiction fantasy being one of my communities is that it is a community that has a tradition of readers and writers interacting, and so it's why I have a Twitter account, for instance. It's why my website has an email button. It's why I go to science fiction conventions, why I go to conferences, because hearing back from your readers teaches you a lot about your writing. Not that you always agree with them, but readers bring me. I mean, readers are a gift. Readers are a gift to me. And anytime somebody takes the time to email me or drop me a line on Twitter and say they appreciate what I'm doing, it gives me that much more energy to keep doing, because writing is hard. And it touches and humbles me in a very deep level. So yes, I do enjoy connecting with the people who've read my work or who are thinking about reading my work, or who just have questions. It's part of the fun of the job.
You said that writing can be really hard.
Hard?
Mm-hmm. What would you say is the most challenging part of writing, and writing the kind of work that you do?
My answer to that is often not what people expect. The hardest part for me is sitting down and doing it. I have ADHD. I have nonverbal learning disorder. I have fibromyalgia. All of those affect energy, clarity of thought, the ability to choose to prioritize the right thing that you need to be working on at any one time, and anything that starts to feel like a job. My brain has a hard time remembering that it's also something I enjoy deeply. So for me, sitting down and starting is the hardest thing. So after I get done talking to you, I actually have a writing date with another author. We're both struggling to get our novels finished by the end of the year. So we're sort of being a mutual cheerleading, just the two of us trying to encourage each other to just keep going, keep going, keep going. Other than that, when I first started out writing the kinds of characters I write and the experiences I write, was a little scary for me, coming from a fairly traditional Caribbean family. Not all of us, but some of us. And being from the Caribbean and knowing the ways which it is and was pretty traditional. It's changed a lot since I left, which is lovely. But that was terrifying, just taking the courage to do that, to write queer characters, to write as characters of color, to write things like polyamorous relationships, to write, and just to write the kind of, you talked about recognizing your aunties. So writing people who were like the people I know used to terrify me. It does not anymore. I just do it. The other challenge is language. I grew up in a tradition of Caribbean literature, which is very, very. There have been struggles for decades now to recognize that the way we speak is not bad English or bad French or bad Spanish or whatever. It is its own language. Languages, because there's so many nations in the Caribbean, and that they have their own grammar, they have their own beauty. And so writing in that literary tradition, but in science fiction, is it's something I'm always having to query myself about. Am I doing it the way I want to? Am I trying to simplify it too much for an audience? Am I going in too deep for the audience? Whoever the audience is, I have no idea. And so that's a constant challenge. And I wouldn't call that a difficulty. It's just making art is challenging. And that's one of the ways in which I work it.
We are half an hour point. So I know you have a busy day of writing ahead, and given what you said, I am
writing, reading, grading,
all the things, all the things.
All the things.
So I'm gonna end it here, although I really don't want to. So this is me. I am exhibiting some really amazing self-restraint.
Thank you.
So I just want to thank you. I want to thank you in a number of ways. Thank you very much for everything that you've written, because I know from my own experience, but I also know from the people who I get to talk to who have read your work, that your work is liberating, it's inspiring, it's changing minds and it's changing hearts. And I know that writing is a very solitary act, and sometimes you don't get the opportunity for your readers to look you in the eye and to basically say, you have changed the world around me, and you have. So thank you very much for your writing. Thank you also for sharing. You were very accessible to me and to others, and thank you very much for being so transparent. I think that's really important, because there's a real amazing woman behind all of these really amazing women and others. So thank you for your transparency. Thank you for your time today. I really want to ask you about what you're writing and when it's coming out, and if I can get it like a signed copy, but I'm not going to ask you that. I'll just and I will let you know when the video is up, and I hope that
All right.
enjoy it. So thank you so much, Nalo.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.